So with the NBA playoffs in full swing, and some teams have had disappointing round 1 exits, that correlates with a video that I like to make every single year. Looking into the upcoming offseason, I'm going to give you guys 20 NBA stars that I think could be on the move this offseason. I always think it's interesting to look back on these as well. Like last year, I predicted guys like Karl-Anthony Towns, DeJounte Murray, and Mikal Bridges to get traded. They ended up getting traded, but then I also thought some guys were going to get moved in the offseason like Jimmy Butler and Donovan Mitchell. Those guys didn't get moved as well. So like always, let me know what you agree or disagree with who I mentioned in this video down below. Let's get into it. And let's start off with a notable name, Zion Williamson. The Pelicans just had a front office change, which sometimes could result in a big move being made because Joe Dumars, the new president of basketball operations over there, does not have any ties to Zion Williamson. He didn't trade Anthony Davis. He didn't draft Zion Williamson. So he may look to move him this offseason if the Pelicans are going to look to do a little bit of a reset right now and capitalize on Zion's value, which I think he recouped a little bit at the end of the 2025 regular season. It was a disappointing season yet again for Zion just because he only appeared in 30 games this year after getting on the right track last year, playing a career-high 70 games in the 2024 season. This year, in those 30 games, he looked as dominant as ever, 24.5 points in just 28 minutes per game, also averaged 7 rebounds and 5 assists. A lot of the hype around Zion last year was because he was developing more as a playmaker and an initiator, and this year, he took those strides as well and can really just be this hybrid force that can dominate you inside, but then can also be a pick-and-roll ball handler on the perimeter. And a team may not view Zion's contract as too much of a burden right now because he is making $36 million at this moment. That's going to go up to $44 million in 2028, but that money is non-guaranteed because of some clauses in Zion's contract. So the team that acquires him, they could have an out if Zion isn't going to be more consistently healthy over the last year or so. Zion is still just 24 years old, and if he can stay healthy, he could be a top 15 player in the league. Maybe he's going to be orchestrated in a large deal this offseason. Maybe it's going to be more of a rebuild trade from the Pelicans, but either way, I think if they made him available, there would be a robust market for Zion Williamson. Maybe he just needs a change of scenery. You know what? We just talked about the #1 overall pick from the 2019 draft. Let's talk about the pick that went right after him. We're going to mention Ja Morant here from the Memphis Grizzlies. They fired Taylor Jenkins late in the year after having some public disagreements all year long between their star player Ja Morant and their coach Taylor Jenkins. And it was more so Ja wasn't involved in the offense as much as he would have liked to. He was averaging his lowest points per game since his 21-year-old season back in 2021, his sophomore year, and did not look like any of himself in the 22 season, where he ended up on All-NBA second team and finished 7th in MVP voting. Ja finished the season with 23 points, 7 assists, and 4 rebounds. He shot 45% from the field and 30% from 3. We know that Ja Morant isn't the best floor spacer in the league as a true #1, so I think that rules out maybe like an Orlando Magic destination this offseason because they need a point guard that can shoot, and Ja's career high in three-point percentage was 34%, and for the last 3 years, he's been averaging around 29-30% from 3, which some teams' offense cannot rely on right now. This would be Memphis either going in a much larger deal for some of the bigger names that we're going to mention in this video, or maybe they're okay going with Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. right now, trying to sell high on Ja Morant because they don't believe that he could be the guy for them moving forward. This would be a little bit of a shocker. I think it's similar to what I talked about with Karl-Anthony Towns last offseason. The Memphis Grizzlies were actually a competitive team all year long, but they didn't have a good end to the season. They got the unlucky draw of getting the 8th seed. They could have been the 7th seed if they beat Golden State in the play-in tournament. They did not do that, so they got OKC in round #1, and unfortunately, Ja got hurt in game #3, so I think a lot of eyes are going to be on what Memphis is going to do this offseason. And maybe Memphis is going to be involved in this player, and I feel like every single team is going to make a call to Phoenix and see what the price is going to be for Kevin Durant. And I think his value right now is kind of fascinating because Kevin Durant, when he's healthy, still a top 15 player in the league. He's still one of the best offensive talents that you can have in the year 2025. I think because LeBron James' longevity is one of a kind, we don't appreciate KD's longevity right now because he's going to be going into year number 18 next season. He's 36 years old, and he played 62 games this year. Hey, that's double the amount of games as a 24-year-old Zion Williamson, and KD in those 62 games averaged 26 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, shot 52% from the field, 43% from 3, 84% from the free throw line. He is still one of the best offensive talents in the NBA within the half court. He's not a complete liability on the defensive end of the floor either for somebody at his age, but Kevin Durant can be a free agent at the end of the 2026 regular season, so you're basically acquiring a 1-year deal, and it's priced at $54 million, so you're going to have to shed out a decent amount of money to get to KD's current salary, and would he re-sign with you right now? The Suns aren't going to get nearly the same value than what they gave up to acquire Kevin Durant from from the Brooklyn Nets at the 2023 trade deadline, but that the way that the Suns are constructed right now, they really can't build a contending roster before KD retires around him and Devin Booker. So I think they're going to look to trade him this offseason. I think they can go a route of maybe what the LA Clippers did. It wasn't a trade, but they lost Paul George. You add Derrick Jones Jr., you add Chris Dunn, some good 3-and-D pieces around your star guys, James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. I think Phoenix can do the same this offseason, but in a trade rather than in free agency. Kevin Durant's teammate, Devin Booker. Now, this would be a little bit more of a shocker this offseason as well, because Devin Booker is a homegrown superstar and could end up as the best Phoenix Sun of all time. Yeah, at the end of the day, if Devin Booker stays with the Suns throughout the rest of his career, he could pass guys like Steve Nash, Charles Barkley, and some of the NBA legends that have come out of Phoenix. But if also the Suns don't think that they're going to get a good enough return for Kevin Durant, they could look to pivot and trade away Devin Booker. And the reason why the Rockets made that head-scratching move with the Nets last offseason, when they basically gave the Nets their picks back and they took on the Suns picks, was to make it a little bit more appealing to Phoenix to give them Devin Booker, because we can give you an out, we can give you your first-round picks back, but we want your franchise superstar. So I don't think there's that many teams that can reach the Devin Booker asking price, but Booker is just 28 years old. He's in the middle of his prime. He's averaging 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists this year, shot 46% from the field, and what was looked at as a down year for Devin Booker. This was probably his worst regular season since maybe his age 21 season back in 2018, but it was still somebody that put up top 20 player in the NBA numbers. Booker did sign that Supermax with Phoenix a couple off seasons ago, so he's owed $53 million next year, $57 million in 2027, and $61 million in 2028. But that's a benefit to the team acquiring Devin Booker, because you got him under control for 3 years, the last 3 years of his current prime, and he could fit on any offense because he could space the floor, because he could play the 1, he could play the 2. He's an elite on-ball player, he's an elite off-ball player. If they were to make him available this year, it would be an extreme haul that they would get back. It's just, could they stomach away trading one of their franchise legends already? All right, so I just briefly mentioned that the Houston Rockets would be well suited to go after Devin Booker, a player that they could involve in those trades, Jalen Green, who was the 2nd overall pick back in the 2021 draft. And if you look around that selection, players like Cade Cunningham, who went number 1, Evan Mobley, who went 3, Scotty Barnes, who went 4. You would probably rather have those guys over Jalen Green going forward, just because of Green's inconsistency so far with the Houston Rockets. That was on full display in round number 1 against the Golden State Warriors. He had a great game too, but outside of that, it was a little bit inconsistent for the 23-year-old super athletic guard. This year in 2025, he put up 21 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, but the efficiency did not take that leap that we would have liked it to. Going into year number 4, he shot 42% from the field, the same from last year. He shot 35% from 3, which was a little bit better on 8 attempts a night, and 81% from the free throw line. Jalen Green also just loves the month of March for whatever reason. He has the best numbers of the season in that specific month. He's also not the best defender in the world. He did get off to a good start this year, but I wonder if that's also the Rocket system, and he's surrounded by some amazing defenders over there in Houston. He did sign a rookie extension with the Rockets before this year started, but it was a little bit different than the usual rookie extensions for a player of his caliber. He's going to be making $33 million next year, $36 million in 2027, but a $36 million player option in 2028. A thing that I do like about Jalen Green, though, is he's usually available. He played 76 games in 2023, 82 games last year, 82 games this year. He's available for you out there, and he's going to give a decent effort every single night. And I do think if the Rockets are going after a big fish this offseason, Green is most likely going to be on the move. And we may as well talk about his teammate over there in Houston, Alperen Sengun, who definitely has more value on the open market than Jalen Green. Sengun is 22 years old. He's a little bit younger than Jalen Green, and they were in the same draft class as well. And it's kind of wild to look back on that draft class and how the Rockets got Jalen Green at number 2, and that wasn't the best player from that class, because Alperen Sengun was the 16th overall pick in that draft. He was an all-star this year as a 22-year-old. He put up 19 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. He's been a very productive regular season player over the last 2 years. He played 76 games this year, and he also signed a rookie extension with the Houston Rockets, where he's going to be making $33 million in 2026, and that goes all the way up to $39 million in 2030 on a player option. But honestly, in today's NBA, this is a pretty good contract extension. I do think that Alperen Sengun is going to be making less than what he is worth on the open market. And like I said, if the Rockets are going big name hunting this offseason, Sengun can get you way closer to a return package than what Jalen Green can give you. So it's definitely going to stomach Houston if they would have to trade away Sengun. but if they are trading Sengun away, the player they are getting back is in a tier 1 category. I do think his value definitely took a hit from last offseason to this offseason, and that is Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. Now, it was much more appealing to trade for Lauri Markkanen last year, where he was coming off another really productive year in Utah, where he put up 23 points, he shot 48% from the field and 39% from 3, and he was criminally underpaid, making $18 million a year. You can easily trade for that contract, but then Markkanen got an extension from the Utah Jazz, where he's going to be making a lot of money going forward, $42 million this year, all the way up to $53 million in 2029. He got a max deal from Utah, and then it was poor timing for him to have his worst year yet in Utah. Played 47 games, the lowest of his career, 19 points, 6 rebounds, shot 42% from the field, the lowest of his career, and 34% from 3, the lowest he has shot since the 2020 season with the Chicago Bulls. Not the year you wanted for Lauri Markkanen in his 3rd year in Utah. I do think a team could try to buy low in Lauri, given how productive he was in Utah the last 2 years, and they were at least a competitive team out there. It's not like those were complete empty stats every single night. And if a team does not have the full-on assets to go after one of the big names we've talked about, like a Devin Booker, a Kevin Durant, or a Zion Williamson, Markkanen could be a good plan B. So Shams recently reported this, and I feel like it was well known throughout the year, especially when they sold the team, but that the Boston Celtics were going to have to shed some money this offseason because they are well over the second apron right now, and they just can't financially stomach all these big contracts on their team right now. And that's with Peyton Pritchard having the best contract in the league at the current moment. So I think somebody that's going to be the odd man out is Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps is 29 years old, and if you do a deep dive on Kristaps between last year and this year, I think Kristaps is on the way down, so Boston may try to still sell whatever value that Kristaps Porzingis has, and he's also under contract for only 1 more year, so they're not going to be able to afford to extend Kristaps, so they may as well get something for him in the offseason, and it's not the largest salary out there either. $29 million this year, $30 million next year. It is much easier to trade for this contract than especially somebody like a Lauri Markkanen if you're looking of a player that's a big that can space the floor, because Kristaps can still do that at an extremely high level. He shot 37% from 3 last year in Boston on 5 threes a night, and then he shot 41% from 3 this year on 6 attempts a night, but he only played 42 games. You can't count on Kristaps to stay healthy throughout the course of the regular season. He did struggle against Orlando in round 1 of the playoffs. I'm intrigued to see how he looks against Karl-Anthony Towns, somebody he played well against over the course of this year's regular season in round number 2 against the Knicks, but I do think it's very likely that Kristaps Porzingis is not on the Boston Celtics next year, and I think a lot of teams are looking for a big that can space the floor, so the Celtics could easily trade KP this offseason. I talked about his teammate earlier with John Morant. I'm going to talk about Desmond Bane here for the Memphis Grizzlies, because you could also talk about Jaren Jackson Jr., but if they're trading Triple J before that extension is due, they're probably getting a massive name in return. So I'm going to talk more so about Desmond Bane, who could be on the move at 26 years old. He's definitely the 3rd option behind Ja and Triple J since he's entered the league, but he got a nice extension from the Memphis Grizzlies, where Desmond Bane is going to be making a decent amount of money going forward, $34 million this year, and it goes up by a couple million every year to $44.5 million in 2029. But Bane is still one of the best shooters in the NBA. Another season of elite 3-point shooting, 39% from 3 on 6 attempts a night, 48% from the field, but I also think took strides from last year and this year as a playmaker. And I think if you want Desmond Bane to be a number 1, he could do that in the half court, or could just be a good combo guard for you going forward. And the Grizzlies once looked like one of the more deeper teams in the league that had such a bright future, but now guys have come and gone. They missed on the David Roddy pick. Jake Oravia was traded this year. That Marcus Smart trade was a disaster. They traded away Steven Adams last year. This team's depth has definitely diminished over the last year and a half, and I wonder if they would try to move Desmond Bane either for maybe a lateral trade and they get somebody that's a better defender, or somebody that has a little bit more size to him, or they try to get multiple rotational players for the Desmond Bane, because yeah, the Orlando Magic could use somebody like Bane because of his elite 3-point shooting. The Bulls are in a really weird situation right now, because another year of just mediocrity. They traded away Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan finally over the last calendar year, and Josh Giddey, Montes Buzelis, and Kobe White were all exciting parts of the Chicago Bulls team this year, but Kobe White is making $12 million next year, which is an extreme value for his production in the NBA. But are you willing to pay Kobe White $30 million a year as a 25-year-old when you should be entering more into a rebuild? There's no point in winning 34, 35 games over the couple seasons ahead, because you're never going to land that franchise-changing talent in the NBA draft. And the Bulls did that again this year. They were a play-in tournament team. They need to avoid the play-in tournament going forward. And I think with a premium on shooting at the NBA level, Kobe White could go for a very nice return, even though he just has 1 year left on his current deal. He averaged 19 points, 5 assists, and 4.5 rebounds last year. He should have won Most Improved Player, and he shot 37% from 3. Some people were asking, was that an outlier season? Nope, he shut up those critics, and he had an equal good year in 2025. 20 points per game, 4.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds, 45% from the field, 37% from three. He was an incredible player in the second half, and I do think Chicago, if they get a good deal on the table, should definitely think about moving Kobe White. And another player they should definitely move this offseason, Nikola Vucevic. They probably should have traded him over the last calendar year as well. And he had a really good start to the 2025 season, and I thought they were going to be able to move him at the deadline, but they weren't able to do that. And he just has 1 year left on the deal, so I think that could have hurt Chicago in like a Kobe White return package. That should actually help the Bulls in a Nikola Vucevic trade, because you don't have to commit long-term money to somebody that's been a little bit inconsistent since getting traded to the Bulls. And at $21 million next year, it's a super tradable contract. Vucevic in the 2025 regular season averaged 18 points, 10.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and shot 53% from the field and 40% from three. Now, you're not getting a good rim protector, you're not getting somebody that can anchor your team's defense, but you're getting somebody that can space the floor for only $21 million, and it probably shouldn't cost you that much to acquire him this offseason. It was really interesting to see if Julius Randle was going to pick up his player option this offseason, and then he also just had the best playoff series of his career. A big knock on Randle in New York was because he struggled in the playoffs, but if you look at that 2021 series against the Hawks, he didn't have much help on that team, and if you look at the 2023 playoffs, he was playing through an injury. We didn't see him in the 2024 playoffs with the Knicks, and he was a very productive player against the Lakers in round number 1. Randle did have an up and down regular season, but he shot 48% from the field. He averaged 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 4.5 assists a night. He has a $30 million player option for next year. I think the Timberwolves are going to have some questions this offseason because they want to figure out how they can build the best roster around Anthony Edwards. Nickeil Alexander-Walker's a free agent, Naz Reid's a free agent, and Julius Randle could be a free agent, but maybe there's going to be a sign and trade with Julius Randle this offseason because Minnesota is going to have to make some cost-cutting moves, and I think they would prioritize Naz Reid and Nah over Julius Randle, and I think Randle has definitely picked up some value throughout these playoffs, and Minnesota can actually get a good return for him. Next up, we're going to talk about LaMelo Ball of the Charlotte Hornets. Maybe like Zion, he just needs a change of scenery. He was the 3rd overall pick back in the 2020 draft, and he has been injury-prone over the last 3 years. Zion has actually played more games than LaMelo Ball since the 2022 season, where LaMelo was an all-star. He brought the Charlotte Hornets to the play-in tournament and averaged 20 points and 7.5 assists. But after that year, 36 games in 2023, 22 games in 2024, 47 games in 2025. The efficiency is not where you want it to be either. The shot diet isn't really the best right now. He can definitely hit some very difficult shots, but he shot 40% from the field and 33% from three. Now, I know in Charlotte, there's not a lot of guys that can really help him out in that half-court offense, creating their own shot, and LaMelo is forced to basically do everything throughout the regular season, and he's 23 years old. And I do wonder with the Charlotte Hornets team and their front office, the front office that didn't draft LaMelo Ball, they've been fairly new over the last year, would they try to capitalize on his value this offseason? Because you never know with the draft lottery. What if they get the 2nd overall pick and they could draft Dylan Harper and they're okay trading away LaMelo Ball for a very good return? He's making $35 million right now, goes up to $46 million in 2029, but he's still extremely young. And what if LaMelo hits his ceiling? He could be a top 10 player in the league at 6'7", who could play good defense and could be someone that can average 28 points per game on good efficiency. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen in Charlotte. Another player in the Southeast Division that's a all-star caliber guard that could be on the move, Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks. Now, I know Trae Young loves Atlanta, but Landry Fields just got fired. They're bringing in a new front office. Would Trae Young being traded this offseason help out the Atlanta Hawks long-term, who don't really own much of their draft capital throughout the next 2 years? There's a swap from San Antonio, and they have to give San Antonio their 2027 first-round pick from the DeJounte Murray trade, but Dyson Daniels took steps this year. He won Most Improved Player. Zachary Reese-Shea looked like a productive rookie. Jalen Johnson looked like a great athletic stretch four before he went down with an injury, and Trae Young is making $43 million this year, $45 million next year, and has a $48 million player option in 2027. I think all signs are pointing to Trae Young staying with the Hawks this offseason, but honestly, if he got moved, I wouldn't be totally surprised because of where the Hawks are right now and building out their roster. And Trae Young is still very young at 26 years old, but maybe they'd rather value the return they can get for Trae Young than what he's going to be like going forward on this team. So I definitely think it's a name to monitor this offseason, but I think there's also other guys in this video that have a more likelihood of getting traded than Trae. Next up, we're going to talk about Michael Porter Jr. of the Denver Nuggets, a player that had a terrible round 1 series against the LA Clippers, but we know that they survived and advanced in that game 7, in which they blew out the Clippers. And Porter Jr. had a productive regular season, 18 points, 7 rebounds. He shot 50% from the field, 39% from 3. And there were big question marks after the 2022 season on Michael Porter Jr.'s health, but he's been available in 2024, 81 games, this year 77 games. He is currently nursing a shoulder injury right now in the playoffs, but I do think that the Nuggets could get a solid return for MPJ, given there's just 2 years left on this deal. after this year's season. $38 million next year, $40 million in 2027, and I know that ownership has a weird love for Michael Porter Jr. because they both share Missouri ties, but if this team needs to get deeper and surround it with a better bench around Nikola Jokic, you could definitely get 2 to 3 good rotational players for Michael Porter Jr., in my opinion, and you'll definitely save some money against the luxury tax with Jamal Murray's extension kicking in, and same with Aaron Gordon. And they got to pay Christian Brown this offseason as well. I mean, it's not been the year for the Sacramento Kings. They fired their head coach, they traded away their franchise star in De'Aaron Fox, and there's been some reports that Domantas Sabonis could be on the move this offseason as well. And Sabonis is a really tough player to put a value on right now because he's a very productive regular season player, but I think with the game on the line, he's not a player that can get it done for you in a playoff series. This year, though, he was a monster yet again, somehow not an all-star in 2025, where he put up 19 points, led the NBA in rebounds with 13.9 a night, 10 defensive rebounds, 3.8 offensive rebounds, shot 59% from the field, and a big knock on Sabonis was he wasn't being efficient enough from the three-point range. He shot 41% from three this year on 2 attempts a night. And Sabonis has a large contract right now, $43 million next year. That goes up to $49 million in 2028. But if the Kings feel like they need to do a rebrand and just kind of change their identity going forward, Sabonis could definitely net them a much larger return than if they tried to trade away DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, or Malik Monk. So I think all eyes are going to be on Sacramento this offseason as they may be going through an organizational shift this offseason. I feel like I had to put a New York Knick here in this video, and I'm not talking about Jalen Brunson. I don't think Josh Hart's going to get traded. I don't think Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby are going to get traded. So I feel like if there was one Knick that could get moved, I'm actually going to go with Karl Anthony Towns. Because yeah, the Knicks traded for Karl Anthony Towns just a year ago, but they don't have super long ties to Karl Anthony Towns. I think they could stomach trading him away after one really good year in New York because Cat is a great offensive talent and he can really maximize this half-court offense because of his ability to space the floor. He won the Knicks game number 4 with his outside shooting, but he was too inconsistent, and that may be just a Tibbs thing. And if the Knicks get a new, different offensive-minded head coach next year, we can really maximize the pick-and-roll partnership of Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, because Cat this year, 24 points, 13 rebounds a night, 3 assists, played 72 games, 52% from the field, 42% from 3, but it is a big contract going forward, where this year in 2025, he made $49 million, definitely worth the production he gave the Knicks. It goes up to $53 million in 2026, $57 million in 2027, and a $61 million player option in 2028. I wonder if the Knicks would try to get a different defensive identity this offseason. You could probably move Cat for 2 to 3 rotational players as well, given how good he was in the 2025 season. I don't think the Knicks are going to make a massive trade unless they get absolutely blown out by the Boston Celtics in round number 2 and they get swept, or it was a very non-competitive 5-game series. But if they were to make a big move this offseason, I don't think they're going to trade any of their wings, definitely not Jalen Brunson, obviously, so I think all eyes would be on Karl Anthony Towns. I talked about the Boston Celtics having to shed some cap this offseason, so if they don't want to trade away Kristaps Porzingis, they could try to trade away Jrue Holiday, who at 34 years old had career-low numbers since his rookie year back in 2010. That was obviously expected with his role being diminished since coming over to Boston. He was so vital to their championship team in 2024, but Jrue was banged up this year, shot 44% from the field, 35% from 3, and 90% from the free throw line. He averaged 11 points, 4 assists, and 4 rebounds, and when he's out there healthy, he's still one of the best point of attack and guard defenders in the NBA, but the contract extension is not going to be kind of Boston. $30 million this year, $32 million next year, $34 million in 2027, and $37 million in 2028 when Jrue Holiday is going to be 38 years old. So they may try to find a team this offseason that could take Jrue Holiday's contract off their hands, but I think it's going to be a lot harder to trade Jrue than it would be for somebody like Kristaps Porzingis. But yeah, I'm also not done on Celtics players because my last spot was reserved for the biggest name on this list, but this is my second to last player that I'm going to talk about. I could have definitely mentioned guys like Aaron Gordon, Austin Reeves, or Jamal Murray. I'm going to talk about Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. I know it sounds crazy, but I do think it's a name to monitor this offseason. I know for the longest time, people were saying, when are the Celtics going to break up the duo of Tatum and Brown and try to get a bigger name next to Jason Tatum? And you know what? They shut everybody up. They won a title in 2024. Jaylen Brown got a Supermax and got Finals MVP. But we talked about the Celtics having to shed some money this offseason. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be lined up to trade for Jrue Holiday. I don't think they're going to want to trade Derek White given what he is as a role player and a complementary piece. This team does not have great big man depth. With Al Horford getting up there in age, they may want to keep Kristaps Porzingis. So would they try to move Jaylen Brown, who was still an all-NBA caliber forward? This year did feel like a down year for Jaylen Brown, coming off his Finals MVP trophy. 22 points, 5 rebounds, still really good numbers, but 46% from the field, 32% from 3. He was banged up this year, missing 19 games, and that Supermax extension has fully kicked in, where where Brown is going to be making $53 million next year. It goes all the way up to $64 million in 2029. And maybe they try to get involved for the last guy that I'm going to talk about next, and Jaylen Brown would headline that package. Maybe a team is willing to part ways with a high draft pick for Jaylen Brown. I think it's definitely on the more unrealistic players we're talking about here, but I do think there's a little bit of a chance, because I also don't think that these playoffs are really going to determine anything on their future specifically, because if they win it all, they may be like, all right, we won 2 titles with this core. We can now stomach trading away somebody that they've built up since 2016. But the last guy that I had to mention, Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's going to be the talk of the town this offseason. I would have definitely mentioned Damian Lillard in this video if he didn't tear his Achilles. But yeah, all eyes are going to be on the Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. I've made plenty of videos talking about that already. A top 3 player in the league at 30 years old who's under contract for the next 2 years could get moved because the Milwaukee Bucks, they have no other choice, similar to what's going on in Phoenix, but maybe at a scarier level because they don't own any of their draft capital till 2031. Their young core is Andre Jackson, Chris Livingston, and Tyler Smith. A lot of guys are free agents going forward. The Kyle Kuzma contract is not a good look right now. Damian Lillard is making $50 million next year for them to not even play because of an injury. So Giannis, who's basically been a top 5 MVP candidate since 2019, he just put up 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 6.5 assists this year, 60% from the field. He was a dominant player against the Indiana Pacers in round number 1, where he averaged 33 points, 15 rebounds, and 6.5 assists, and they still lost in 5 games. They would get a generational haul in return for Giannis, and I do think he'd be the biggest name on the trade market this offseason. So that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know who you agree with or disagree with that I mentioned down below, and if there's a player that I mentioned that you don't think is going to get traded, let me know. And if you think that there's a player that will get traded that I didn't talk about, also let me know down below. Drop a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy. Subscribe for all offseason content and playoffs content throughout the next couple of weeks. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.